concussion coming off that thing standing right here.
There are some great shotgun manufacturers out there, but the Italian Benelli is one of those names that rings with posh overtones. Owning one of these scatterguns makes you immediately feel as though you've moved up in class, like you'd feel at home tasting wine on a weekend retreat, eating fine cheeses, and spending your evening at the opera. Well, not me, but maybe you. This here is the Benelli SuperNova, a workhorse of the Benelli lineup. It's a step up from the Nova while maintaining a reasonable price tag. Obviously, it's a pump-action shotgun, and with that you get reliability and some extra versatility. This guy uses the proven 2-lug rotating bolt system. It's beefy and just plain works. The loading port is cavernous, making reloads almost as simple as spilling the shells right in. The loading gate even stays in place up out of the way after you push it up. All that extra space and the tough man build allows for 3.5-inch shells. This gives you some extra firepower, not usually attainable in some 12 gauges. Another distinct feature is what Benelli calls the magazine stop button, right here under the handguard. What it does is lock the mag tube so that when you rack it, the spent shell is ejected, but no new one is loaded into the chamber. This is great if you plan to carry on an empty chamber after shooting, or maybe even load a different type of ammunition for a single shot. But a pitfall to having this button here is that it definitely limits aftermarket handguards, although there's not a wide variety of third-party stocks either. You probably observed this massive mag extension sticking out the end of my gun. The standard mag capacity on the SuperNova is low due to international import regulations for this 4-inch shotgun. These Nordic Components extensions can take your stock 4+1 capacity, only 3 if you're using 3.5-inch shells, and can boost that up anywhere from 1 to 9 rounds. I went with a +6 extension to bring my firepower to a whopping 10+1. Not bad at all, and probably more 12-gauge madness than you'll ever need outside of competition. With this, you're also going to have to throw on a barrel clamp right here to stabilize the magazine tube, and there's an option for installing a Picatinny rail like this, allowing for a light or whatever other accessory you could throw on the end of a shotgun. For those of you who are wondering about the risks of extending that mag tube beyond the barrel, I can assure you it is perfectly safe. Competitors have been doing it forever. Not to mention, this is only a couple inches beyond the barrel. I've seen shooters with extensions reaching out to 12 inches with absolutely no ill effects. Plus, my gun has a modified choke installed. Just imagine the rule of thumb that even with a cylinder bore, the shot spreads out at about 1 inch per yard. So given the 1/4 inch or so between the barrel and mag tube, it's going to be a solid 18 inches or so before things start to get interesting. Muzzle blast also won't hurt it, so there's nothing to worry about. Also, the shorter barrel does save a little bit of weight, and personally, I do really like the look of a long mag extension, but different strokes for different folks. Now, you are going to lose your toolless field strip potential with that mag extension on here. Normally, the magazine cap can be used to push and even pull the pins out of the receiver for the trigger group. I'm not too worried about that, as I would rarely remove those outside of the workbench. The stock barrel is great, chrome lined and threaded for chokes, but mine only had a single fiber optic front post without that second bead, and I really like the 2-bead system, so I opted for this Carlson's 24-inch barrel with the brass bead in the rear and the fiber optic front. This barrel length provides adequate performance without overly limiting my mobility. Though even at that, the shotgun is still definitely long. Look at it compared to my Saiga 12 bullpup here. If you go any longer than 24 inches, it does get a little unwieldy for anything other than hunting purposes, which is fine if that's what you enjoy. Now, it uses a crossbolt safety that's reversible. The location is perfect for my hands. It sits right next to my index finger, although I could see how it could induce some strain and be a little uncomfortable if you've got those midget digits. Honestly, with shotguns, the safety location isn't of the highest priority for me. Just train with what you have and you'll have those hatches battened down. The trigger guard also gives plenty of space, so use with heavy gloves in the winter would be plenty manageable. The trigger itself is average. It has an adequate brake, but it pulls pretty heavy in the range of 7.5 to 9 pounds. As I've said before, a weighty trigger doesn't bother me too much when shooting shotguns. Also, the reset is decent. I don't feel like the trigger limits my abilities with the SuperNova to any degree. The handguard is lengthy, making room for a wide range of arm lengths or shooting styles. It does take up some room on the receiver though for you side saddle guys, so that might limit you to attaching additional shells to the stock like this, unless you can find something small enough to fit on the receiver. The groove texture on the handguard has proved to be plenty for serious racking. I've never had my hand slip at all, so no complaints. Now, the receiver is steel, but it has a polymer outer shell. It's great for protection against the elements and feels very solid. It doesn't look half bad either. There is availability for modularity of the SuperNova, as you can see with mine right here, but it's not going to be to the same extent of what you'll expect with a Mossberg 500, for example. The recoil impulse is great for a pump gun. The weight has something to do with that, as well as what Benelli calls their Comfort Tech stock. It sounds more scientific than it is. It's designed with these little chevrons cut out that are meant to allow the stock to flex and absorb recoil. It seems to work, although you'd definitely be hard pressed to prove it. On top of that though, there's these nice gel recoil pads to please your shoulder. They can be swapped out for various sizes to adjust the length of pull. Then there's also higher cheek risers if you want to adjust your comb. Benelli claims this beloved stock reduces recoil by as much as 48% over competition, whatever that means. It doesn't clearly state what that competition is, but in any event, it's clearly a nice shooter. But more important is the fact that the SuperNova, as I said, is reliable. It has chewed up any length or brand of ammo that I've thrown at it, and minimal maintenance is required as it's not going to foul the way that an autoloader would. I did Duracoat my SuperNova. They don't come like this. I used an OD green and coyote brown finish, then added this little decal sealed with a lacquer here. I have a terrible habit of putting American flags on foreign guns, and I'm probably not going to stop. I just can't control myself. If you've never shot a SuperNova, you're missing out. If it fits your style, it's as good as any pump shotgun on the market. At a reasonable price point with a reputation for quality and some nice trademark attributes, it's hard to beat. With the Benelli SuperNova, you get a looker with some brains to boot, and that can be a rare commodity. So take it, run, and don't look back. Thanks for listening to another Doomsday Brothers review. Feel free to subscribe, and we appreciate those likes.
Nice.